In this video, you're going to learn 5 Muay Thai sparring tips that are going to make you better and going to help you improve your game. The first sparring tip is have a plan. Before you start sparring or before you go into any sparring, you should have some kind of an idea or a plan of things that you want to work on. So if you've been working on low kicks in training or your instructor has been going over specific drills or combinations, you should have a plan to try and implement what you learn, because if you want to improve, you're going to have to use what you learn, or else you're not going to remember it when it comes to a real situation, because you have to repetitively do something over and over. And so that's where having a plan comes into play. You can work on your weaknesses, you can work on different aspects of your game. So that's very important, is have a plan before you start sparring. The second thing that will help you improve your sparring is learn how to use your head and think when you're sparring. Now this is something that's very difficult to do when you first start, so if you're a beginner watching this, don't focus on, you want to try and use your head, but it's going to be very difficult. But as you get more comfortable, as you start to learn how to do different techniques, then everything will start slowing down, and you'll be able to start using your head and start thinking when you're sparring. So thinking is very important when you're sparring, because it helps you to adapt to different types of opponents, and it helps you to focus on what you're trying to do, and it helps you to implement the plan that you had going into sparring. So if you have a plan when you spar and you don't think when you're sparring, well, you're not going to implement the plan. So you have to learn how to use your head and to try and focus while you're sparring, and that helps slow things down, and that helps to make everything more comfortable around you when you're sparring. You'll remember to keep your hands up, remember to block. So thinking is very important when you are sparring, and that's going to make you much better in Muay Thai. The third aspect of improving your Muay Thai game through sparring is learning how to be adaptable. You might have a plan going in, but you might find that specific opponents might be more difficult than you're used to. You might face somebody who's really tall, and if you're used to sparring a certain way, that's going to be very difficult when you're sparring, because the height is going to create issues for you. So you have to remember, you have to be adaptable and be able to change. You might have to change your style a little bit. You might have to be more in and out. You might have to make more feints to come inside. So depending on your opponent, you have to be able to adapt to specific things that they're doing, and that's going to make you much more difficult to deal with when people are facing you, because you're going to be able to adapt to any style that you come across. The fourth tip is spar with everyone. Don't be a snob and only spar with people who are your level, or try and spar with people who are worse than you. You need to spar with all 3 types of people. You need to spar with people who are worse than you. You can help them out, but you can also, when you spar with someone who's not as good as you can actually implement a lot of new techniques. You can work on a lot of different things, because their level is not going to be the same as yours. So when you work with beginners or people less than you, not as skilled as you, that's a great opportunity to work on different new techniques or anything that you want to try and implement. And then when you work with people your level, that's when you're gonna improve your timing, your distance. That's when you're gonna improve your guard, and that's kind of when you're gonna hone in on a lot of your typical skills that you're developing. And when you work with somebody who's better than you, that's when you're gonna learn and see, okay, that aspect of my game I need to improve. I'm not good at blocking, I'm getting caught a lot. So people better than you are going to teach you a lot, and you're going to find that you're going to run into a lot of difficulties. So working with people who are worse than you, your level, and better than you, that's very important in improving through sparring. The fifth thing that you should work on when you spar is to remember to use your knees. I work with a lot of people in sparring, and I think a lot of gyms in the West, maybe they don't allow knees in sparring if you're a beginner, which is understandable, because if you're a beginner, you shouldn't use any knees, because you don't have any control over your knees. But if you throw proper knees, you should only be targeting your opponent's midsection. You should never throw knees to the face or knees to the head. Or jumping, flying knees, those kind of knees you shouldn't be throwing unless you're playing around with someone who's going really soft. So when it comes to knees, the type of knees that you throw should only be straight knees to the solar plexus, to the stomach, or you can throw knees in the clinch. And you need to work on using your knees when you spar, because that's going to teach you how to develop the right timing, because knees, you have to be able to step inside to land the knee, and you have to learn how to set them up. And too many people never learn how to throw proper knees because they never use them when they spar. So you have to work on using your knees, because knee is a very important aspect of Muay Thai. And most people in the West are not very good at throwing knees. They don't have good distance, they don't have good timing. They work on some flying knees, but those knees only effective in specific situations. So remember, the final tip is to work on using your knees, and don't throw them 100%, but work on landing them and work on your knees, especially when you're technical sparring. But as a beginner, if you don't know how to throw knees, or if you're a beginner, then work on general sparring. Don't work on throwing knees, because you might end up hurting your opponent if you try and throw a full power knee. And those are 5 sparring tips that are going to make you better in Muay Thai.